The two-day Ukraine Peace Summit in Switzerland has concluded, marking significant progress towards a peaceful resolution. With over 90 countries signing the declaration, the summit's outcome lays out a possible roadmap for a peaceful resolution, but it lacks unanimity and was agreed in a summit where Russia was not invited. Here are the details.
The Ukraine Peace Summit in Switzerland has successfully concluded with over 90 countries signing the final declaration. Swiss President Viola Amherd presented the key points of the communiqué, emphasizing the importance of the safe use of nuclear power, the protection of shipping navigation routes, and the return of unlawfully displaced children and detained civilians.
We have managed to agree on a common vision here on the Bürgenstock. We have set out that vision in the Bürgenstock communiqué. Herewith we are sending a clear signal to the people of Ukraine and to all those directly affected by the consequences of the war. A large part of the international community has the desire to bring change.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky praised the support from Western and other leaders at the summit, highlighting that this collective effort underscores the potential to restore the rule of international law.
That we can achieve results as soon as possible. And it is exactly these and other similar practical steps to restore security and peace that will prove to everyone in the world that the UN Charter can be restored to full effectiveness. All the principles and purposes of the UN Charter. Thank you very much. Slava Ukraini.
Meanwhile, Russia has expressed its willingness to engage in talks with Ukraine. However, it stressed the necessity of guarantees to ensure the credibility and seriousness of any forthcoming negotiations.
Putin is not rejecting anything. He is not rejecting the possibility of talks. He says there are legitimate bodies there in accordance with the country's constitution, who is authorized to conduct negotiations, etc. Negotiations, as a rule, are conducted by expert people, but the results of negotiations are recorded by legitimate. Agreements on paper are the fruit of very complex expert negotiations, a balance of interests, and of course, taking into account the realities on the ground. And this will be the case this time as well.
As the summit comes to an end, the international community remains hopeful that these declarations and commitments will pave the way for lasting peace and stability in the region. With Bureau Inputs, Amish Mahajan's report for DD India.
India participated in the Switzerland-hosted summit on peace in Ukraine on the 15th and 16th of this month. India's Ministry of External Affairs Secretary West Pavan Kapoor represented India at the summit. India did not associate itself with any communique or document resulting from the summit. At the summit, India emphasized on a peaceful resolution to the conflict through dialogue and diplomacy. India pitched for sincere and practical engagement between both the parties to the conflict, calling it essential for achieving a resolution. India said it is committed to engaging with all stakeholders and both parties involved, contributing earnestly towards achieving an early and abiding peace. Meanwhile, U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan has dismissed the peace proposal presented by Russian President Vladimir Putin as unreasonable, saying meeting Moscow's demands would make Kiev even more vulnerable to further aggression. Sullivan noted that Kiev would also be bound to disarm under the Russian proposal so that it is vulnerable to future Russian aggression down the road. He added that no responsible nation can say that this is a reasonable basis for peace, as it defies the UN Charter, basic morality, and even basic common sense. DD India's correspondent Dasha Cherneshova is now live from Moscow. Dasha, what do you make of Kremlin's statement now that the summit has come out with a communique?
Well, certainly the Kremlin is making it clear once again that its offer is still on the table, even though the Ukrainian authorities and the West have dismissed them, saying that the proposal of Russian President Vladimir Putin to withdraw Ukrainian troops from the entire territory of four regions that Russia now claims as its own. Ukraine says they belong to Ukraine, was denied and described as the call for capitulation. Moscow still says that it is possible to negotiate with Ukraine, and that proposal is a peace initiative. We also heard the Kremlin saying that every time that Russian President Vladimir Putin is making a peace proposal or a proposal that is trying to bring this conflict back to the political and diplomatic track, it takes into account the realities on the ground. And from the point of view of Moscow, at this point, the reality on the ground suggests that Moscow has the upper hand. That is going to change even more in Russia's favor, according to Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov. It will be even worse for Ukraine if they reject it at this point. And also we understand that Moscow has many concerns with regards to the legitimacy of the Ukrainian president Vladimir Zelensky, saying that his mandate has expired. But the problem is not with whom negotiate. Moscow will, one way or another, will still be able to find the party that will actually be signing the document with Russia, and then it will still be legitimate.
Dasha, also many countries agreed on the communique in Switzerland, but many didn't. It says peace requires a dialogue between all parties. As I said, there's no unanimity still. Another conference we hear could take place in Saudi Arabia later. Russia and Ukraine don't even agree on how to start talks between them. So do you expect any forward movement anytime
soon? Well, certainly the understanding in Moscow is that any conference that is supposed to bring this conflict back to the political and diplomatic track should be taken into account Russia's interests. Russia says those are legitimate interests of Russia. And given the very fact that President Putin also noted that the world is close to the point of no return, the hope is that any conference that will be involving Russia's participation and that will not be based on the Western formula or Vladimir Zelensky formula, but instead will be taking into account Russia's concerns, such as the provisions of Russia's goals in the operation in Ukraine, then it would certainly be helping to improve the diplomatic track for this conflict. But as things stand now, it doesn't seem to be the case, with Russia spending more of its budget on the military needs and the Western countries pledging more financial and military aid to Ukraine.
We'll leave it at that. Dasha reporting from Moscow.